The rights and wishes of the poor are not as, how do you say, equally enforced, sadly, here on earth as the wealthy. The wealthy hire firms of attorneys, they have legal representatives in all their transactions, they have all types of trusts, living wills, all types of estate planning, things that are afforded them. The poor are just trying to stay alive from day to day for the most part. But when you've been as maltreated as I have, in other words, you trust doctors and nurses for your health and welfare, and instead they try to murder you, it is a sadly necessary thing to create a living will, even if you can't afford to hire an attorney. And the best way to do it is by your own hand. In other words, what they call a holographic will. Now, I'm not making a last will and testament here. I'm just making a living will. And in my case, I'm posting it publicly as I have no witnesses per se here in my own living quarters. So I want the public to know that I have created a living will, and it's being created on this particular date and time. Pacific Standard Time, August 23rd at 12:52 and 30 seconds. Blank sheet of paper, pen in hand. Alright, let's see if the camera angle on this can capture as I write. Living will for Michael Swenson. Being of sound and sober mind, with a clear conscience. I, Michael Swenson, do hereby declare my medical directives with my own hand. Okay, now the things that we are advised to cover are things like whether or not we want to be resuscitated. After the hellish experience doctors and nurses have put me through and suffering every day of my life ever since their maltreatment, I give my advance directive of do not resuscitate. And do not intubate. Now, you don't have to put that in a living will. You can just tell your doctor or any medical practitioners, hospitals, whatever in advance. that you do not want to be resuscitated and you do not want to be intubated. I mean, if that is your wishes. In other words, if my heart and brain waves have stopped and I'm medically dead, I don't want anybody trying to bring me back. Now, if God Almighty wants me here, He's more than capable of resuscitating me all on His own. I don't want anybody else trying to prolong my agony down here. I have not enjoyed incarnation, straight up. I'm not saying I never had any good experiences or fun or good times. I'm saying by and large it's been as close to hell as I ever want to get. Everything I've read about history, everything that God went through for us, everything that good people have gone through for us, all the evil down here, I've had my fill. If I'm dead and gone, don't bring me back. Okay? I hope that's crystal. No feeding tubes. No dialysis. No vaccines, immunizations, inoculations, injections of any kind without my express authorization. In advance. End of life care. If terminally ill, but still conscious, let me rest at home in my own bed. If terminally ill, in a coma, unconscious, or in intolerable pain, keep me sedated until death. That is, if terminally ill and in a coma or unconscious. Or, like I said, in intolerable pain. In other words, with advanced notice, I would be telling them, keep me sedated. End of life palliative care. End of life palliative care. Sedation until dead. No organ or tissue donations. Too many people have been murdered for their organs, and I tend to think doctors and nurses had every intention of doing that to me. The greed and the evil industry in that regard, illegal organ harvesting, I will not encourage by being an organ donor ever. No organ or tissue donations under any circumstances. No experimental medical treatments. No scientific experiments on my body. An autopsy can be performed to prove that my testimony is truthful, that doctors and nurses tried to murder me and gave me an incompatible blood transfusion, and my ex-wife poisoned me. An autopsy can be performed to validate my testimony about the methods of attempted homicides against my person. Signed, no treatment by doctors and nurses without my express authorization. Signed by my own hand. This 23rd day of August 2022. Now, there's a video record of it. Here it is in writing. With my face. I'm tired of doctors and nurses thinking that they're kings and queens on planet Earth, or lords and ladies that everybody else must bow to. You need to realize that statistically, your profession is now the third leading cause of premature death. So no matter how intelligent you think you are, no matter how educated you think you are, no matter whether you consider yourself a world's leading expert in your field, you will consult with me, Michael Swenson, regarding any and all recommended treatments. And it is up to me, and me alone, to either approve or disapprove of them. In other words, there's a whole bunch of you that think you know better, and you don't. You're actually killing your patients. So, respect my will. I mean it. If possible, though I am presently poor, if possible, anybody violating this will be facing legal consequences. And if they seriously violate it, I hope criminal consequences. I am really tired of medical practitioners getting away with assaulting, injuring, and even killing their own patients. And my experience in recent history with medical professionals across the board in 4 states was so horrific that if I could, I would have not only prevented them from ever practicing medicine on any person ever again, I would have taken many of them and thrown them in maximum security. Doctors and nurses murdering their patients for organs should be on death row. Should be getting executed for such horrendous crimes. It's a massive level of betrayal that only those that survive their homicide attempts can comprehend, and so few do. That when I tell you that I did, most people can't even believe it. It's that horrendous. So when I say that there's a global problem with doctors and nurses murdering their patients for organs today, you should take me seriously, because very few live to tell about it. Living well. Do not resuscitate. Do not intubate. No feeding tubes. No dialysis. No vaccines. No immunizations. No inoculations. No injections of any kind. Keep your deadly poisonous drugs to yourself. Thank you. If you think that you have some type of substance on this planet that can prevent death, You're deceived and self-deluded in that regard. Everybody dies sooner or later. So really what we should be doing and expecting from medical practitioners when we're terminally ill, um, and there's no known cures, medically speaking, worldwide, no matter how hard you might search for whatever you're terminally ill from, should be end of life comfort. The dying process is painful, and frankly, I've suffered more than I ever wanted to. Like I said, I've suffered so much that if I'm terminally ill and or unconscious and or in a coma, keep me sedated. Do not in any way, shape, or form wake me up to experience more pain and suffering before I die. That's cruel. I've left behind my testimony, so I don't need to answer any more questions. I've signed affidavits in my own hand. I contacted all known authorities in our entire country that had jurisdiction over the crimes that I experienced, and you all failed miserably, every single one of you. So if there's any decent authorities left anywhere on this planet that cares to address mass murdering doctors and nurses, sex offending cops, and basically a failure of law and order from the highest offices of our land on down, may God give you great success. But if I'm dying on my deathbed and haven't eaten, haven't drinking, and I've been unconscious, don't wake me up. Don't pester me. My body is more than sufficient evidence that I have told the truth. I have also placed evidence of collusion between my ex-wife and Officer Nags of the Bonner County Police Department and Lehman and a whole bunch of other corrupt police officers in my safe deposit boxes. Corrupt FBI agent, some guy over 7 feet tall. Can't even remember his last name. I don't ever want to see the guy again. None of these people have made restitution. I have suffered every waking moment since the crimes against my person occurred in May of 2004. It actually began in 2002 with my ex-wife poisoning me. None of these people apologized or made restitution to my person as of this date, August 23rd, 2022, and I have been suffering every single day since. And poverty makes it even worse, because even if you have intellectual knowledge on things that could help your quality of life somewhat, you can't even afford a decent diet on Social Security and Social Security disability. So when I say if I'm gone, man, don't resuscitate me, I mean it. None of these people, man, deserve any type of grace from God. He might still give it to them, amazingly so. I don't ever want to see him. I never want to see him. Like I said, short of an apology straight to my face, and it's got to be convincing. And if they have the ability, restitution. In other words, I'm not just suffering, but I'm suffering even more because I've been left impoverished, indigent. So respect my wishes. Medical practitioners should never play the parts of lords and ladies over any of us. Every single individual should have the absolute right to determine what they think is in their best interest, for better or for worse. In other words, it's one thing, when doctors and nurses think they know better and then they kill their patients because they really didn't. In other words, they make medical errors on accident, even if they have good intentions. But it's another thing when they're deliberately murdering their own patients for organs. And this innocent citizens today have no idea whether or not you're dealing with a mass murderer, a Hannibal cannibal. I'm sorry, man. I mean, anything mankind can imagine, even these evil horror movies, which is why I don't watch any of them, is something somebody probably is actually doing somewhere. So I find no entertainment in horror films because it's basically not just celebrating evil, but it's maybe even encouraging it. In other words, like I said, um, after having visited paradise, the evil in this world is as close to hell as I ever want to get. Um, I'm sorry that I think some people deserve to burn. Um, but if any of the people I encountered that attacked my life and or that watched people attack my life and did nothing to stop them, and or are part of the government to cover up these types of crimes, keep them from public knowledge, and any and all persons involved in that whole evil system, if you want to escape the flames of damnations, you need to repent, and that means you don't ever do any of that evil again, and and more than likely, if you're going to really obtain the salvation of God, you're going to have to expose that you were part of such an evil organization that is covering up hospital homicides, illegal organ harvesting, deaths of millions of innocent citizens over the past decades. All this evil agenda of so-called population management by the wealthiest people on earth. As far as I'm concerned, they're just the worst demonic scum the world's ever known. In other words, they figured out by taking control of the so-called fourth estate media that they just keep their genocides from being publicized. So everything that we see on television, even modern warfare, is scripted and approved for the most part. And the only time you ever get any type of potential truth is when you listen to personal testimonies from persons that are alive from the dead, like myself, on alternative media. Now, I'm not saying there aren't any good people on the planet. In other words, people that from their heart and soul try to live righteously and try to perform their duties competently, professionally. I'm just saying that for the most part, despite the fact that there are such persons on the planet, it's the evil ones that have made being down here in flesh and blood so intolerable to me. It's watching the greediest people on earth intentionally jack crude prices and cause runaway inflation where they can attack mass millions of innocent poor people worldwide that can barely afford groceries as it is and now can't. So they are intentionally driving people homeless and starving people. While, as far as I can tell, there's some protest somewhere, but it's not nearly enough. I mean, I'm wondering how many of you have to die worldwide before the greediest scum the world's ever known are properly arrested and charged with crimes against humanity. There's no excuse to jack petrol prices. I don't care if there's a war going on somewhere else in the world. You don't declare war on the entire populace because of it. In other words, don't mistake my words here. I hate warfare. It's just another evidence of the evil of mankind. But my point being is, by them saying one member of OPEC has declared war on another nation, so let's declare a trade embargo against OPEC, so OPEC declares war against the whole world by jacking oil prices? Stop killing the poor people. Soldiers of every nation should turn around and execute your um, criminal scum leaders. Arrest them, publicly try them for their crimes against humanity. And that includes manipulating you and sending you off to kill other innocent people on planet Earth. As far as I can tell, it's the leaders of nations that are the political puppets of the wealthiest people on Earth. And the wealthiest people on Earth have invested in things that kill and destroy. I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. All recent pandemics, before they became pandemics, were already viruses that were undergoing research with patents as evidence. In other words, every pandemic in recent history has patents that predate the pandemics for investigating those viruses. I think that coincidence tells us that these pandemics are actually intentional. They are not naturally caused, is my point. Man is meddling with viruses that only affected animals, and in the process, they crossed over and became zoonotic and are, in fact, the causes of the recent pandemics. Like I said, the wealthiest people control the media, so you shouldn't be, and they control their political puppets, so you shouldn't be believing their storylines. You need to believe the patents of record. Every single one of you should be researching that. I didn't make that statement flippantly. I did research it. And the patents for HIV, for COVID, all predate, sometimes by many years, the actual pandemics. And I'm not saying there weren't patents also that are afterward, but my point being is somebody somewhere on the planet started researching these viruses before they became pandemics, and that's facts of history, recorded facts of history. So I don't want anybody accusing me of medical misinformation or anything like that. I accuse you of willful ignorance and false accusation, slander, and libel if you dare do so. Okay, back to the main topic, living will. You can see it. I just drafted it by my own hand. One other thing I want to add. No amputations. I am tired also of the medical world pretending like they don't know better. I'm sorry, I don't believe that mankind is a bunch of blundering, blithering, babbling idiots. I just don't believe it. So you can't tell me that you don't know that diabetes and every other chronic and terminal condition that is linked to organ failure is also linked to the circulation system. In other words, if you argue that you can build a machine to do the work of our organs, or that you can create an organ, a lab-grown organ that's DNA compatible to each person, and you understand the function of an organ is to do X, Y, Z. In other words, if you understand that the organs basically work with the circulation system to keep a person healthy. Then, if there is organ failure, you detect that by not only their excrement, urinalysis, but by analyzing the blood, and not just counting the cells, but by morphological analysis, thorough analysis of the components of their blood. So if you know that the that the circulation system is adversely affecting cells in their feet, you don't cut their foot off or their toes off. You correct their circulation system. Seriously. I mean, this is not rocket science, folks. Um, in other words, standardized medical care should involve um, internal and external hydrotherapy and making sure the circulation system is kept healthy. And that prevents, even if a person has a failing organ, that prevents cells in their feet or hands or extremities or whatever from dying due to poor circulation. In other words, the reason why they cut off people's feet and infections and so on and so forth is poor circulation. So it's a circulation issue. It's not a and again it's linked to the fact that we are intentionally fed things that are making us sick and killing us by the powers that be. And they refuse to stop doing it. Have not enough people already suffered and died to arrest all the scum responsible? In other words, it's a fact that high fructose corn syrup is something that is not easily processed by the body. It spikes insulin and creates insulin resistance, which creates diabetes. And it's one of the number one most obvious factors as to why people in Western civilization are developing these chronic conditions. Poisons in our food, poisons in our beverages, poisons even in our so-called medicine and drugs, poisons in cosmetics, poisons in hygiene products, poisons. So most people that are chronically ill are actually suffering from toxic overload. You've got so many poisons in your system that you're dying from being poisoned, not because your organ failed you for no particular reason. It's because your organs were assaulted by evil people putting poisons in virtually everything we ingest or put on our skin. And that's just a fact. And why the rest of humanity lets these people go on doing that to all of us is baffling to me. I mean, I personally want to see every single one of them arrested and tried publicly and executed for their crimes against humanity. They have caused massive amounts of suffering and premature death. And they did it intentionally. Don't let the lies of the wealthiest people on earth fool you like they just didn't know anything like that crap. Folks, they know. You don't get to be the wealthiest, most powerful people on earth because you're just totally stupid. No. So everybody that's in charge of all these formulations that are actually poisonous and toxic to us, every single toxic laced big pharma product is approved by them because they are paying those so-called government regulators. The government regulators go hand in hand with the manufacturers. Bribed politicians, corruption everywhere. And the greediest people on earth, you should start from anybody and everybody that has the most money on the planet and just work your way down the numbers. And by and large, you will discover that it's all organized crime of the worst kind against the masses and done in the name of so-called legitimate business. Jacking fuel prices on Earth. Supply and demand did not change just because there was a war going on someplace on the planet. No. Russia's a member of OPEC. So if one of their members declares war, the rest of the members shouldn't all of a sudden just jump up and down for joy as they extract every last, red cent from the rest of the world for crude. In other words, the war looks like more of a conspiracy that way, and not just against Ukraine, but against every living soul on the planet, but the wealthy, greedy scum that are behind it. And if the rest of humanity won't arrest them for their crimes against humanity, or if they're unwilling to execute these people for their crimes against humanity for any reason, I volunteer myself. I have no problem executing these greedy scum for their crimes against humanity. I have no problem executing every single one of those responsible for poisoning vast numbers of millions of innocent, unsuspecting citizens that are all getting sick because of it. They've taken over food supplies. They're taking over water supplies. They're taking over, what you put in your body and what you put on your body, to the point where you're not even getting a choice anymore. Now, organic heirloom varieties, healthy products, and so on and so forth, at least in my experience, are considerably more expensive. So everything they're doing is actually a very real attack on the poorest people on Earth, who are not really given a choice as to what they can do to survive these attacks by the wealthy against them. Now, if they're healthy enough and strong enough, they go back to foraging, fishing, hunting, farming, if they can. But many people are just poor and trapped in cities and sick and don't have weapons and don't have body armor, don't have any means to really defend themselves and take care of themselves from these attacks that are going on. So when these attacks that are going on, we, the poor innocent citizens of the world, are calling on the powers that have militant might, police powers, to realize that the worst criminals on the planet right now are not your average Joe walking down the street, or somebody so desperate they shoplift. I don't know. Maybe nowadays shoplifting food is on the rise. Who knows? Those are not your real criminals. The real criminals are the wealthy people attacking us all. Now we need to arrest them and their puppet politicians and put some honorable poor citizens in power. If the rest of humanity ever wants to get a real break from crime and corruption of the worst kind, which is the powers that be today. Now, if there's any of them that are honorable, like I said, I didn't find any. I sent out a call to, I don't know, at least 3 different presidents. And that's after exhausting the entire chain of command of police powers and executive powers. I contacted all representatives, legislative powers. I filed a class action lawsuit, and when I discovered that I was a rare survivor in which mass millions of innocent citizens have been murdered, hacked up for their organs. and this has been going on for decades, and it doesn't hardly ever make the mainstream media. Every once in a while, maybe there's a special, I don't know, investigative journalist report on stuff like that. But it's like one tiny blip in when you're inundated with just pure crap via the mainstream airways. I don't know. I don't know if this says to God, look, um, I think it's bad enough already. When are you coming back to get rid of the demonic scum that are making this planet a living hell? Modern civilization could be wonderful. Seriously. With billions of people on Earth, you could all improve your quality of life like to no limit if you would just agree to treat each other righteously. After, I don't know, 50 years of hard labor, you could have retirement communities just as a right for all citizens. I mean, virtually anything you can agree on could be done on the planet, but you have to agree on it. And when there's billions of people on Earth, there's so much good things possible, and instead it's just becoming really crappy. I mean, your lives are under attack from the time you're born on the planet. They are openly under attack now. And the wealthiest people are getting away with assaulting and injuring and killing hundreds of millions to billions of people on the planet right now. So this living will is a result of the fact that I've been so maltreated by so many people that I don't trust anyone. And 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 that is a horrible state to be in. People that profess Jesus Christ as their personal Lord and Savior, I tend to, give a little bit more, time to show their character and conduct to me. But people that don't, or people that openly hate God and the Holy Bible and things like that, I don't want anywhere near me. I think every single one of them are wicked, demonic, um, deceived, self-deluded fools on their way to the flames of damnation. And that's because I've died and found out that what the Holy Bible tells us is true. So when God says if you don't like him, in other words, if you won't come to Jesus Christ, it's because you're evil. I've found that to be, in my life experience, absolutely true. In other words, you're a criminal. You're not somebody I trust. You're not somebody I want anywhere near me. So as a result of being in a world of criminals now, where doctors and nurses murder their own patients, I'm not saying all of them, but I find it, somewhat challenging to believe that entire squads of doctors and nurses can be killing their own patients in hospitals without the rest of the staff, and especially the administrators, knowing it. So as far as I'm concerned, hospitals now have become a very evil thing. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't anybody that has gone into them and hasn't been well treated, some good surgical procedure, some, I don't know, broken leg or something like that, put in a cast. I'm just saying that it's difficult for me to believe when the numbers are as high as they are of iatrogenic caused deaths, that the administrators aren't involved somehow. Most of the profit-driven hospitals today retain firms of attorneys because of widespread medical malpractice. So you will respect my right to make my own decisions for my own health and wellness. I don't want any of your drugs or vaccines, especially viral vaccines, any of that crap put in my body. In other words, as far as I can tell, all these pandemics in recent history are money-making schemes by the same people that are poisoning us with their drugs. They're evil. And they're so obviously evil, I can't believe the rest of humanity puts up with it. You're sick with cancer and they recommend chemotherapy and radiation. The people treating you wear big, heavy, protective gear from the radiation because radiation is harmful. They know it's harmful, or they wouldn't wear all the protective gear they wear when administering you those treatments. So they are intentionally harming innocent people that just are trusting them with their lives. It is unbelievably wicked to do what they're doing today. And they've been getting away with it for far too long. God says, a lot of people don't realize this, but God says everybody involved, the manufacturers of these pharmaceutical drugs, the distributors, those prescribing them, every single one of those people are going to be tossed into the flames of damnation. That's what the Holy Bible says. Now, I know a whole bunch of you will try to have psychological denial, but God says that all the nations on earth were deceived by drugs. And he says he's going to toss the druggists, in other words, the manufacturers, the prescribers, the dealers. It's all illegitimate. It's all evil. Now, I'm not saying modern medicine hasn't done any good for anybody. I'm just saying that it is so thoroughly evil that even well-meaning people are killing their patients, injuring their patients for life. And it's especially true in the psychiatric industry. To this day, psychotropics are so toxic and so poisonous, not only can they kill you or give you premature liver damage and kill you, but also give you permanent brain damage. They're basically the equivalent of chemical lobotomizers. Now, I'm not saying what they give the outpatients in modern mood-altering substances is deadly. It is deadly if in other words, if you overdose on it. But you're letting them manipulate the chemicals in your brain, and that means they're manipulating not only your moods but your thoughts. You're drugged. And by that I'm saying you've been poisoned. They use poison in the name of healthcare. And some of the poison, like I said, is so toxic, it causes permanent organ and brain damage. Now, I know I repeat myself in a lot of my videos, but like I said, the reason for my stipulations in this will is because when I look at this planet and what people are doing on it, it's horrific. It's horrific. And it's just part of day-to-day life. They treat it like as if it's an honorable job to injure and kill people in the name of healthcare. And then the insurance companies are all involved in it too. Again, these are all the wealthiest people. So they only back what actually injures and kills you as medical care and treatment. Seriously, it's insane, but that's the truth. I mean, my insurance policy, I was reading all the things that they cover, and then I get down to the things that they do not cover. And it's in language like this. Absolutely, under no circumstances do we cover naturopaths, alternative medicine. They're the only ones that are actually trying to heal people in truth with a clear conscience. We won't cover herbs. We won't cover nutritionists, proper diet. We won't cover any type of natural remedies that God created and made for your health and wellness. We will cover our entire corrupt system that gives you toxic poison in the name of healthcare. We will cover things that are guaranteed to cause a premature death, like chemotherapy and radiation. And we'll cover all the things that are maltreating and killing mass millions of innocent citizens today in the name of healthcare. But we won't cover any of the things that will actually make you well. And if that doesn't tell you that the world is run by genocidal scum, I don't know what does. If the rest of humanity does not stand up against these demonic evil people, they will go on thinking you all deserve to die. In other words, they'll consider you so intellectually inferior and so inferior in every way for not having the courage to stand up for your lives that they'll just go on killing you in greater and greater numbers. You have to stand up to them. The wealthiest people on earth are most definitely guilty, and by ubiquitous evidence, by things that you can see taking place every single day in front of your eyes. They generate, the World Bank generates currency at will. And don't tell me it doesn't. The skyscrapers of bank headquarters are some of the largest structures on Earth. So if they can build trillions of dollars of real estate improvements that serve their interests, there is enough money to take care of the citizens of the Earth properly. And that means no poisons in our food, no poisons in our air, no poisons in our water or beverages, no poisons in our hygiene products, no poisons in our cosmetics, no poisons in our medications. And until that happens, as far as I'm concerned, everybody in those industries are guilty of crimes against humanity. And if it was in my power, I'd arrest them all. Now, each and every individual has the absolute right to choose what they want to ingest or drink. In other words, consume into your own body, whether by injection, eating, drinking, and also by absorption, what you put on your skin. But when manufacturing is ubiquitously has poison-laced products for everybody, and is advertised as if that's acceptable to eat, drink, and put on your skin, then people are deceived into thinking that there's nothing wrong with those things, and those things are killing them. They're injuring them, making them chronically ill, terminally ill, and prematurely dead. So there is everything wrong with even FDA and WHO approved healthcare treatments, etc. Mass millions, hundreds of millions have suffered and died already. How many more have to before the rest of humanity realizes that this is an entirely evil racket set up by the wealthiest people on earth? And whenever there's a pandemic, and there's patents that predate the pandemic, and sometimes for many years, even a couple decades, then with the advent of genetic modification and so on and so forth, and their ability to claim that they've created a viral vaccine that is attenuated, that cannot morph into any other strains, etc., etc. Claims without evidence. After there were companies that had already invested in those viruses and viral research. And why did they invest in those viruses that became pandemics before they became pandemics? Why are they not being grilled? Why are there not competent investigations against these people and entities? I mean, if I was in power, man, every single one of those companies, man, would be under intense scrutiny and questioning. I'd find the evidence because I don't believe that the eye just popped into their head one day to let's investigate this virus that's killing these animals. Oh, now it's a pandemic. Well, here, seconds later, we have something that will prevent the spread, and the spread goes on anyways. It's it's horrible to say, but the in modern civilization, the entire healthcare system is actually profiting from making people sick and prematurely dead. It's not profiting from making people healthy and well. Now, I'm not saying that certain types of surgeons and people that help you with sprains and strains and broken bones, things like that, aren't doing a good job. But I'm saying that for the most part, the reason why there's so many people that are chronically ill and terminally ill today on the planet isn't due to natural causes. It's due to the poisons, all the toxins. It's due to the fact that the chemicals that are poisonous that they put in food and beverages and medicine and even the air today, water systems and so on, so on and so forth, over time accumulate in your body and cause damage to your cells, cancers, etc., etc. Now, they have a list of known carcinogens, but what I'm getting at is all poisons are harmful to your body to a greater or lesser extent. And many of the poisons that are in all these products are not water soluble or water soluble enough to the point where constantly being poisoned by everything you eat, drink, and put on your skin over time, and even nowadays even breathe, is causing more and more and more people to get chronically ill and terminally ill. And then you go into your healthcare provider and they give you more poisons. And that's what the insurers cover. So the entire system is guilty of assaulting and killing mass millions of innocent people. And God Almighty told us in the Holy Bible that that's why He's going to toss them all into the lake of fire. They are not innocent, folks. Now, I'm not saying every single doctor and nurse, that is on the planet is evil. I'm saying they are part of a very evil, socially engineered system by the wealthiest people on earth to actually maltreat people in the name of healthcare. And I've had my fill of their socially engineered crap down here. Like I said, I mean, if now I'm not saying that I have a walking tall type attitude. I'm just saying if there's nobody else willing to, take on the task of arresting them all for crimes against humanity, and then put me in power. I can't do it myself, but I will summon, and by taking control of our national economy under a presidential declaration of national emergency, I will summon special forces units necessary to make all these arrests. Now, if you still want, despite some some drugs are so poisonous and so toxic, they actually carry warnings of being lethal. Lethal side effect. Do you want to take this? You're somebody that, I don't know, snapped because of maltreatment, and you're just not even talking anymore to other people, and they shuffle you off into some mental ward, and they're giving you these pills that say do not administer to anybody with hepatic issues. In other words, liver complications, your liver's failing you. The pill itself, the reason it carries that is because it's so poisonous that it's going to damage your liver, guaranteed. You take it for any length of time. You're going to turn jaundiced. Your liver's going to fail you. Then the poisons can really do their damnedest and give you either permanent brain damage or make you dead. And those pills are actually approved by our so-called regulators. So it is with approval of their political puppets that the wealthiest people on earth are manufacturing substances to be administered to innocent citizens that permanently injure and or kill them prematurely in the name of healthcare. No arrests are being made. I'm like, you arrest somebody for smacking another citizen and throw them in jail for 5 to 7 years. But giving them permanent organ damage, or brain damage, or killing them, no punishment whatsoever. All these people are acting like situation normal. So that's why I've got a DNR and DNI on my living will. I've had enough of this crap down here. In other words, if God isn't going to give me the power to arrest the scum, or if he isn't going to, take their breath from them himself for being such evil, demonic pieces of crap, or if the rest of humanity isn't going to come to their senses and demand their arrest for their many crimes against us, then I don't want any part of you. I'm not saying there isn't any good people down here. I'm just saying, apparently not enough to restrain widespread evil before my eyes in the name of modern civilization. Why is all this evil being allowed to take place? When they jack double and triple crude prices at the pump, causing runaway inflation, that is absolutely an economic attack on hundreds of millions of people. Every state capital should be surrounded right now with protesters. Are in Washington, D.C., protesters around the White House, around the House of Representatives, around the Federal Reserve, around anywhere the wealthiest people and their puppets conduct business and or live, saying, you correct this situation right now, or we'll correct it for you. In other words, your arrest, your trial for crimes against humanity, your just executions, and your replacements. And if they do the same thing, we'll do the same thing to them. And that's the way all, citizens should act worldwide against their wealthy governing leaders. Straight up. Comprehend this, folks. The people that run the World Bank and your central banks of your nation, they live in palaces. They have more than enough money to absorb runaway inflation while you all starve to death. So, what I'm getting at is, they don't have any excuses. There are no excuses by these wealthy scum that are allowing genocides to take place on Earth on a regular basis now. And again, I've just explained it in It's day-to-day life now. The entire planet's got so many evil people in it that everybody else acts like situation normal. This is just, what we do for a living: kill people, harm people, injure people, and they look at us, dog, with such admiration. I don't. So don't patronize me. Don't treat me like I'm an imbecile or an ignoramus or anything like that. You will run any of your counsel for medical treatment by me first. And I will either approve of it or disapprove it. And you will respect my decision. And that's how every single individual should be treated on the planet. Their body, their right to make their own choices for their own medical care. And frankly, insurance companies should cover naturopaths, and the fact that they don't, as far as I'm concerned, is grounds to arrest them as well. In other words, as far as I'm concerned, this day I've examined it, and I can, with a clear conscience, say that the entire system, our so-called civilization, reeks of evil scum throughout, massive corruption throughout, a lack of law and order, a lack of honor, a lack of proper virtues. We've got rapists, robbers, and murderers in uniform, acting like they're the police, like they're the public servants we're all supposed to respect. We have major problems now with the fact that there just is not enough personal integrity to obviously to curtail all this evil from just being a part of daily life. And for me, I can't tolerate it anymore. I refuse to tolerate it. In other words, God doesn't have to act on any of our demands, but we also don't have to sit idly by while all this evil takes place on earth. We can elect to depart. In other words, if he wants me here, there needs to be situation cleanup on planet Earth, like real fast. The greediest, most wicked, genocidal scum on the planet need to find themselves properly under arrest. The selfish, greedy bankers that are in control of enslaving all humanity, and the networks and everything else, all of them have to be under arrest. And if mankind won't do it and stuff, I don't want to be here for what follows, because it means you're intentionally leaving some of the most evil scum the world's ever known in power to do whatever harm they want to all of you. I've had it. I don't have any tolerance for it whatsoever. And like I said, if nobody else will execute them, allow me the privilege by my own hand to do so. It's not that I, take pleasure in the death of anyone, but when they're attacking hundreds of millions to billions of innocent people on the planet, they gotta go. Straight up. And that's exactly what they're doing. And like I said, they've made it's so disgusting, they've made it part of day-to-day living. So that innocent people actually think that like that's perfectly normal and totally acceptable to kill your own patients in the name of healthcare, to administer poisons in the name of healthcare. I look at the world like in a state of disbelief of how evil it is. And like I said, God told us in the Holy Bible. Now, in the English translation, they considered anybody that made poisons like that, chemical poisons, sorcerers. Way back in 1700s, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th centuries. Bunch of just ignorance, man, regarding medical practice, and somebody that made potions and drugs, tinctures and salves, and acted like a druggist or anything like that was considered a sorcerer or sorceress. So the English translations continue to pass on that word, sorcery and sorcerers, but the original language is pharmakia, and what that literally means in modern English is pharmaceutical drugs. And the reason why the whole world is deceived by pharmaceutical drugs is because people everywhere believe that by taking these toxic pills, you're going to get better and well in the name of healthcare. That's deception. You're not being told you're ingesting poisons that are going to do damage to your organs, over time make you sicker and prematurely dead. When a doctor prescribes chemotherapy and radiation for cancer, some of them actually think they're doing the right thing. That's deception. When you're depressed and you go to see a psychologist or psychiatrist, and they prescribe some of the most lethal drugs that the world's ever known, called modern day psychotropics, that have injured and killed hundreds of thousands to even millions of people. And there's class action lawsuit after class action lawsuit, but it never stops. And that's because the wealthiest people on earth put on a charade and laugh about those pittance fines or class action lawsuits, and or try to get them curtailed by bribing Supreme Court justices, and or putting one in office to begin with, more of an appointee by the greedy, corrupt scum, just like other political pawns, than an actual elected official or somebody that's approved by the general populace. And so these political puppets, man, of the wealthiest people on earth are consenting to the open genocides taking place on a daily basis. And as more and more people get sicker and sicker and die prematurely, the charade goes on. Now, I have fought for many years to stay alive, because I kept hoping to see God's hand somewhere in all this. And instead, it looks to me like he sent the most evil scum at the end of the age on the planet, in order so he could just unleash his justified rage upon you all. In other words, maybe it's not a rapture. Maybe it's just that all the good people are being murdered and or dying, just to make way for God's wrath. In other words, the incineration of the planet and all the demonic scum left behind that were so evil they murdered, so many people today. In other words, I don't envy survivors in the coming years if all that's left behind are the most selfish, greedy scum the world's ever known. Now, I don't believe that's the case. I believe there's got to be some decent believers, but man, I'm Michael. I'm standing upon the earth, and I've been sounding the trumpet just as hard as I can. I need you all to unite. Stop bickering among yourselves. Stop arguing among yourselves and face the real evils of today. Stand united. Um, if you took the time to listen to me, um, thank you. I hope God will raise up righteously indignant people all over this earth against all the crimes against humanity taking place on earth today, and put an end to them. And please agree with me in prayer that He's going to intervene, stop all this evil. If there's enough money for the wealthiest people on earth to live in palaces, many palaces, and to luxuriate themselves with every good and service, there is enough money to put an end to this evil situation. In other words, they don't need more money by jacking petrol prices. It is absolutely a deliberate economic attack on the lives of innocent people. In other words, these people are genocidal murderers. They're mass murderers. There's absolutely no reason from one day to the next to be doubling and tripling prices on crude. No reason. Don't believe any of their crap. There are oil reserves all over the planet, so just because one nation like Russia stops shipping, now I'm not saying that they're not a major supplier. I'm just saying that it doesn't mean that the rest of the nations of the world and all drilling platforms can't increase their operations to compensate. And in the meantime, if there's any legitimate reason, like an actual real shortage of crude, which I don't believe, but if that was actually the case, then the immediate decrees of presidents and governments all over this world would be a state of national emergency in which they designate that it's time for us to cross over from crude due to said shortage into hydroelectric power, and that we are going to, over the next 2 decades, refit all engines for all transit, especially goods and services like truckers, with hydroelectric motors. Seriously. And for them not to take such action, if there is in fact a real shortage, a genuine shortage, is negligence. It's irresponsible on their part, and they are contributing to the deaths of innocent people. All right, living well. DNR, DNI. Okay. I don't want any machines, measures, whatever. If my time has finally come, and that's how I look at it, to rest from my labors, I don't want anybody trying to prolong my agony down here. Thank you.